You are listening to When Life Gives You Lemons, the podcast that speaks to high-performing individuals who have been through adversity but come back stronger. I'm your host, Emma Levy, a physiotherapist who has helped elite athletes on their way to Olympic success. This podcast was born following my own trauma when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of just 36. Sat in the chemo chair, I set myself the goal of starting a podcast to explore resilience and the importance of mindset. I just want to take a quick moment to thank you for listening and ask you to please press the follow button. Remember, you can catch all of our episodes on YouTube and follow us on Instagram at Life Lemons Podcast. Now, on with the show. Today, I'm welcoming Luke Tarrant to the podcast. Just this year, Luke experienced a life-threatening motorcycle crash whilst in Colombia, which resulted in the loss of one of his legs. He is now a single-leg amputee and disability advocate. Since the crash, Luke has shared his story online, where he showcases his determination, positivity and resilience, and he is determined to use his story to help others. I'm super excited to chat to Luke today and ask him about his story and how he manages to foster his positive mindset despite the daily challenges he is having to overcome. Luke, thank you for coming. It's really good to have you down here. Thank you. It's quite funny. I came across your story quite organically on Instagram a while ago. Okay. And I thought, it'd be great to have him on the podcast when he's doing stronger. Yeah. So it's actually really good to see you sat here in the country.
I appreciate that.
Well. Yeah. I mentioned in my introduction you were in Colombia when this crash occurred. You were travelling on a motorcycle across America, is that correct?
Yeah, so I'd done a few motorbike trips, but the one I crashed on, I bought my motorbike in the US, in Texas, and I was just meandering down to Antarctica slowly. Like I didn't have like an end date in mind or a specific route. It was just, I was doing it for myself, just slowly making my way through the Americas, and then got as far as Colombia when I had my crash. But it took me about, I think that part of the trip I'd done about 10 months already.
And you'd given up a corporate job.
Yeah. So I did. I gave up I had a job on the trading floor, doing banking, which it was like one of those things. When I was in my early 20s, just finished uni, it was the novelty of being there. Like, come from a state school, I'm thinking this is amazing, and then slowly I was like, actually, the novelty's worn off a bit now. Like I've done this, and the thing that I've always said motivates me isn't like money, it's just have an interest in life. And the moment it stopped becoming interesting, I was like, it's time for me to move on. So I quit. I did a trip around Asia on my motorbike, went Australia, came back through Europe, and then US and down.
Wow. So what's your kind of history with motorbikes? How long have you been involved with riding them?
A while, but there's no. My parents hate motorbikes even more now. They hate motorbikes, but it's one of those things that me and my friends just seem to fall into. We don't have a specific reason for it. I think my friend Jack, who was with me for a part of that trip, not when I crashed and I started solo, but then he came and we did bits together. He's the one who I think got into it first. But we used to do little trips when we were like late teens. 18, 19 to like the classic Asia, go to Thailand, rent a scooter, and all of us were just sort of like, this is amazing. Like, it's just pure freedom. And that slowly seeped into the rest of life, and it went from little 50cc scooters in Thailand to like geared bikes to bigger bikes to eventually all of us had Harleys in England, and we'd just razz about on weekends, to then at one sec, why do we stay in England? And then we got adventure bikes it just sort of grew and grew and grew from just being like, the first time we did it was abroad, just on little scooters having a good time.
So when you're in South America, there's times when you're on your motorbike just by yourself?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. Well, so I did the stuff in Asia by myself, and then when I left for the US, I was by myself for a few months until my friend Jack, decided he wanted to come and join for a stint. But I'd already been on the road for months by myself at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, it was some of my favourite. I'm a very sociable person. I like being around people. I like constantly like bouncing off everyone. But being on the road on your own is nice. Yeah. I actually really enjoyed it.
Were you ever scared of something happening and you being alone?
Honestly, no. It's probably a bit unwise to even think that, but no, I just always thought it'd be fine.
Yeah. Are you happy to talk about the day of the crash?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I'm cool with it, yeah.
What actually happened that day?
Well, I don't remember the actual crash itself, because it's like just been erased from my memory, or I had a lot of injuries I had my helmet on, obviously, and I think my head had hit something as well, but the crash impact was taken through the helmet, so I had a mark on my face. So I think I was probably knocked out. So I don't remember the crash itself. I just remember waking up in a ditch, and I say waking up, like it's trying to remember a bad dream, and I think there was someone there. If he was right here, I'd have no idea what he looked like. I think I'd feel like it was a bloke, maybe mid-30s, but I've got no idea. So I have a memory of that. And then the next thing I remember, I was in a place with a wooden roof. I was lied down thinking, if the roof is wooden, I can't be in a particularly good medical facility. And I was also in the middle of nowhere. I was in like the Andes Mountains in Colombia. And then I remember them trying to chop off my motorbike trousers and thinking, you're going to have fun getting them off. They're like Kevlar reinforced. And after that, there's nothing until I woke up in a different part of Colombia with them just saying, oh, we need to chop your leg off.
Literally?
Yeah, it was just like...
In English or Spanish?
In Spanish. My Spanish is all right. Like, by the time I learnt it over the last few months, because sometimes I'd live with a family, sometimes I'd just spend... a month living in one place because I liked it, and I'd get to know the locals, and I'd barely speak any English for like 2 weeks. But it wasn't perfect, and weirdly, I don't know how this happened again, but the only thing I had on me, so I woke up, I was literally naked, I had like a gown sort of on top of me, and my phone was just on my chest. Not even I had a case previously, didn't even have the case on it. Had none of my other stuff, just my phone. I kind of woke up like, what's going on there? So when they said, oh, yeah, we need to chop your leg off, I'm thinking, that means we need to chop your leg off, but can you just check that one on Google Translate?
Oh my God, so what did you do? Did you just say like, okay?
I was like, no, senor, not today. Well, I asked to speak to a doctor, because this was just like a nurse.
Right.
And she was like, wait, there's none here. There's no doctors here. If you want to speak to the doctor, they'll be in tomorrow morning at 8, which is when they're going to chop your leg off. So I basically just said, like, you ain't chopping my leg off tomorrow. Like, I need to get some sort of second opinion, which is when I got on Instagram and I was like, I need to get to Medellin.
Was that the nearest city?
Which is the nearest city. And through the power of the internet, I managed to get an ambulance to Medellin, which is fairly far away. But yeah.
How did that actually come about then? Did someone local help you with that?
Yeah, it honestly, it's all a bit of a blur. Someone local helped me sort an ambulance, which got me to Medellin. I got to Medellin, the doors swung open. My mate Jack, who I was telling you about, because we would travel, by this point we were travelling together, but we'd go off on like little side missions. So I'd want to go and travel from A to B via a boat and this mountain, and Jack would want to do it via the road. And so we're best mates. We were not tied to each other. We'd sometimes do different things. So he flew to where I was going to, because he was almost down by Ecuador at this point. So the ambulance doors swing open and Jack's there like, you all right, mate?
Oh my God.
And he was like, what's happened? Obviously knowing what had happened. And then they had a couple second opinions. They tried to save my leg for like a day. They put a cage around it.
Right.
I mean, you're a physio, you'll know, like those cage things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I've seen the X-rays of my leg. It was mashed.
It was totally mangled.
Yeah.
But you don't know what actually happened in the crash.
No,
there has been no intelligence. No one's told you this to this day.
Like, you ask the police. I mean, it's remote Colombian police. It's not like here where you get a report like, we think this happened. We see this in the road. It was just, do you know what happened? No one knows. No, and that was that.
Do you want to know?
Like, if you told me you knew what happened, I'd say, go on then, tell me. But I don't sit around at night thinking about it. When I do try and think about it deeply, like think about the crash and the moment I kind of woke up and the people, and I get this sort of feeling of, don't go there, mate, just leave it. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. My leg's gone, like, it's not going to come back if I suddenly know what happened. And
yeah,
it is what it is. I can't do anything about it. So,
but memory's a strange thing, isn't it? Because I wonder how much of your subconscious has actually kind of taken it all away for now.
Yeah, it might. It could be there. One day it might come back, and if it comes back, I'll be interested to know what happened. But like, I don't feel I need to know what happened.
Yeah.
Because for closure or anything like that, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So you're in Medellin now.
Yeah.
And you have your surgery. So did you trust the healthcare out there? Were
Yeah,
you
I did.
quite reassured at that point?
Well, Medellin. One of the reasons I knew Medellin was the place I needed to get to was because my obviously I spent a lot of time there, but it's got a history of narco wars and obviously all the Pablo Escobar bombings and this, that. So when it comes to amputations, like, they've got experience, they know what they're doing. And the doctors there seemed very competent. And to be honest, I had full faith they knew what they were doing. There was no part of me thinking, like, the first thing everyone says when I said I got my leg chopped off in Colombia, even some of the doctors here would be like, oh, well, we better, like, check what they've done. But everyone that's checked what they've done has said, yeah, they've done a good job.
Okay. And your parents had come out at this point?
Nah, not by that point. My parents, so Jack was with me, and then my parents were obviously at home and trying to get all the insurance stuff sorted out because, like, it's not free to be in hospital for that amount of time and then the air ambulance home. It's a seriously big bill. So they clicked into action and they were on the phone to the embassy, they were on the phone to the insurance, they were just getting all the admin sorted out. Once the insurance had said, there's like a million questions they have to go through to make sure it's like within the policy, which it was, because I made sure I had the right insurance. But they got that sorted. Then they flew out to Colombia. But by the time they got to Colombia was when it actually started to get really bad, because the leg thing was obviously not great. But then after that, I got sepsis. My lungs filled with, I mean, you know the medical terms. Is it edema or something? I had pulmonary edema.
Yeah.
A pulmonary embolism. Basically, my lungs filled with fluid. They stopped working. My kidneys weren't working. All these things started shutting down. I had sepsis. So then I went from hospital, like normal hospital, chop your leg off, back in the ward, fine, to intensive care, and then intensive care to critical care. So by the time my parents got there, I got to like the worst possible state I could be in. And they arrived and I didn't really know how bad a state I was in, but they said to my parents, if you don't be thinking about this as like a day-by-day thing now, or even an hour-by-hour thing. It's sort of, things can change minute by minute, like just be prepared for how bad this could get, sort of thing. So my parents basically landed to that. So, wasn't the nice Colombian holiday that...
Definitely not. No. And am I right in saying that your dad posted a video on Instagram and that just basically went viral?
So I was a bit out of it, so I don't quite know what led to what, but when I put a couple stories up, firstly to try and get to Medellin, which went, I know stories don't really go viral, but they kind of went viral because they were just spreading everywhere. And then once I had my leg chopped off, I made not a joke, I made a comment on my stories again saying, right, my leg's been chopped off. I've got the video somewhere, but I said, pros, I've got a good fancy dress costume now. I literally just woken up at this point as well. I was probably still a bit high on all the drugs, but I was like, I can go as a pirate to everything for Halloween. But the cons, I've just bought 2 Birkenstocks, so if anyone wants a left one, they can have it. And obviously, like, all my mates are at home, everyone I know, I'm not keeping anyone updated. That's the only thing they've got to go on, and they're all watching it going, what on earth is this bloke doing? Like, he's just lost his leg and he's making a gag about anyone wanting a Birkenstock. So that went kind of viral. And to be honest, like, I look back at it now thinking, was that some sort of like coping mechanism or what? And I think honestly it was just a bit of letting other people know I was still fine. I was me, like, everything was going to be fine. It was my way of being like, right, you lot can all relax because I'm fine.
And you were probably a bit drugged as well.
A bit drugged, yeah, but not really. Like, I remember it pretty clearly.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was. Even when I spoke to my mum, like, my mum was on the phone crying her eyes out, and I actually don't remember this bit because this was when I was in the bin. But apparently, I said to my mum, "What are you crying? What are you crying about?" And she was like, "Well, like, you're gonna have your leg chopped off." And I was like, "Mum, it's my leg. I'm not crying. Stop crying. Like, we're all good." And I think that mindset did help them because they were like, "All right, he's all right with it. Maybe it's going to be fine."
Were you all right with it from the very beginning?
The leg thing, honestly, it sounds weird to say this, and if someone else was sat here saying this, I'd be like, obviously you wouldn't be. But genuinely, yeah, I was just a bit. not that it's not a big deal, because it's a huge deal, and the times I've struggled with it most have been since trying to adapt to normal life. But when it was first chopped off, I was just like in survival mode. I wasn't thinking, oh, it's going to be tough learning to walk again, I'm going to be on crutches for ages, and prosthetics aren't going to fit. I was just thinking, oh, nice, I'm alive, decent. My other leg's broken, let's try and get that put back together. And I was just sort of in that survival. Even when I flew back to England, I was still in survival mode, right? Not that I needed to escape Colombia, but it was like, right, that bit's done. Colombia, back to England, amputee hospital. Okay, amputee hospital, let's learn to walk, let's learn to do this. And it was just one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. There was a goal. The time when I then actually, the first time I had any sort of mental wobble was the first time I visited my flat in London. They gave me like weekend release from hospital. And I went into my flat in the wheelchair, couldn't get through the door, tried to get in the bathroom, the wheelchair wouldn't fit. In the night I wanted to get up to get some water. I was like, wait, I can't just get up. Because until then, everything was kind of being done for me in hospital. Yeah. And it was that sudden realisation, like, oh, one sec, things have changed. Yeah. And that was hard. That was really hard.
So how did you deal with that?
I'd say that for about 3 days I wouldn't say I've ever been like depressed in my life, but for 3 days I knew what that felt like. I was just so mentally drained. Everything just felt gloomy. And then I went back to hospital because of obviously just weekend release, and kind of got back into the swing of the recovery part again. Had another weekend at home, a little bit further into the hospital journey. Another dip, but not as deep as the last one. And I kind of it's a bit of an upward trajectory with the odd dip, which you just have to kind of ride. And I knew from the last time that it didn't last forever. I had 3 days where I was miserable. So then the next time I went home, I was like, right, well, the other one passed. It's that quote everyone always gets overquoted now, that this too shall pass. I just sort of I would actually say that to myself. I was like, this is crap now, but it'll pass. Yeah. And it did. And then I still have them now, but they're just tiny little dips now rather than big whopping 3-day depressive stints.
How long were you actually in hospital for, both in Colombia and the UK?
Maybe 3 months, I think. For about 3 months. I had a month in hospital in Colombia. And
you got flown home private jet? Like a hospital, like an ambulance thing.
Private jet.
Not quite how you'd have imagined it when you were like a young boy.
I remember saying to my dad, I was like, I told you I'd get in a private jet one day, and he was just there like, not like this. But yeah, it was quite funny though, because the private jet, it actually was a private jet. To be clear, it was obviously all paid for by the insurance. I'm not got loads of cash, but it was. You look down, and it's a hospital. There's all the things, tubes in your arm and this and that, and everything's decked out like a hospital. But obviously I was lay flat, so I was looking at the roof, and the roof was like gold trim, all these like nice touches. And then you look down and I'm thinking, it's like a plane of two halves. The top part is a private jet and the bottom half is hospital. So I said to the guy, like, there was a couple pilots on board and medical staff and everything. I said, well, like, whose plane is this? Where does this plane come from? And it was actually a Qatari prince had like bought himself a private jet, and after a year gone, I fancy a bigger one. So they just turned it into hospital.
Amazing.
Yeah. So like my dad said the toilet was like gold.
Oh my God, ridiculous. So then you went to a rehab hospital in London, and that's when you learned to walk, yeah? Yeah.
So I had 7 weeks in the rehab centre. Mm-hmm. Which was great. It is an amazing facility, and it got me back up walking a bit. And actually, I left that hospital walking all right, and then just through prosthetic issues, and there was a bit of a delay in my NHS prosthetic being the right fit. I spent a lot of time on a prosthetic that was the wrong size, because you probably know as a physio already, but like the residual limb, it shrinks over time because the muscle wastes away, the swelling comes out of it, shrink. So when they first cast my leg, it was massive. Yeah. And then by the time I got a new leg, I was having to wear about the equivalent of like 15 socks. Just like wearing a shoe that's 30 sizes too big for you. Yeah. It was just hammering away at my stump. So I've kind of, if anything, got worse in the last 3 months, and now I've got a prosthetic that fits. I'm starting to come back out the other side, but it's been a bit. I thought by now I'd be jogging about, and as you can see, I'm still using my crutches because I've had a bit of an annoying time with it. But
it's a really hard transition with the prosthetics that I don't think people on the other side really realise.
No, neither did I.
No, because all you see is the Paralympics and people running on blades.
Yeah.
But, you know, it takes ages, like you just said, to find that prosthetic that fits. And also everyone has different preferences, don't they?
Well, everyone's got different preferences, but there's also different levels of injury and different amounts of limb left. Like my leg got chopped off at the optimal length to begin with, but I had sepsis, like I said, so it was very infected. So they did 8 more surgeries on that leg, and every time they would take a bit of skin, or once or twice they took more bone, which meant the limb got shorter and shorter and shorter. So now I've got less of a limb than I would like. And sometimes I find myself comparing myself to like other amputees. I'm thinking, how long's this stump? But then I kind of have to check myself and be like, I mean, we'd all rather have the whole foot back. So fine, I'd rather have a longer stump, but then again, I'd rather have my whole leg. So
Yeah,
it's
but
a
you know,
tough
it's early days as well. Like we were just saying right at the very beginning off camera. It's not even been a year, has it?
It's 6 months, yeah.
I mean, that's like nothing.
Yeah, 6 and a bit months. I think my 6-month anniversary was like a week ago or something.
Yeah, so you've been through like a massive trauma. Does it ever feel just like a bad dream?
I mean, it feels like not even a bad dream, because actually life is fine. I'm quite enjoying life, and like I said before, my goal is to just have an interest in life. And to be honest, it's pretty interesting right now. I've obviously lost a leg, which is interesting in itself, but then there's also all the other things that are going on. Like I wouldn't be sat here chatting to you about this if it hadn't happened. I wouldn't be like doing these little things on telly, and people wouldn't be coming up to me in the streets and, oh mate, I've seen you on Instagram. Like, I've never cared about social media. I've never tried to do social media, but like it's just blown up out of nowhere. So like I do wake up thinking, what is going on? But it's not a bad dream. It's just different.
Yeah.
But I'm all right with it.
I saw on a BBC article about you, actually. It's you said, I want losing my leg to be a force for good.
Yeah. That was early on, that one as well.
Was it?
That was kind of before even all this madness. That article was like, I was in hospital in Colombia when I had that call. I think this was 2 weeks after I lost my leg.
So your Instagram had just literally just blown up. So news agencies were just finding you through that.
Yeah, I mean, so the video you mentioned about my dad, I kind of remember how that came about, because when I was in sepsis. Have you seen that video?
Yes.
So when I was in like sepsis, critical care zone, I was on another planet. I think obviously the infection, but also the drugs were just completely mashing my brain. So I couldn't speak. My dad would say something like, I would try and say something to my dad like, oh, can you pass me that please? Or in my head, I've just said, pass me that. But actually all would come out was, and then the ability to even make syllables stopped. And then I started doing hand signals. And apparently, I don't remember this, but apparently my mum wrote the alphabet out on a bit of paper so I could like point to the letters, but I would just sort of like point at the ceiling. Like, I was just completely out of it. And then I was on this ventilator. It's called P something. CPAP. Yeah. So it straps to your face, and it forces air into your lungs. So I remember just sometimes I'd kind of be aware of what was going on. I just feel like, and then one time I tried to catch my breath, so I tried to breathe for myself. But I was kind of out of sync with and it suddenly made me feel really nauseous. And I was kind of sick in the CPAP thing.
Oh, God.
And my dad just ripped it off my face. Thank God he did, because it can just shove it back in. But that whole being sick thing and the thing coming off my face and all the chaos, it kind of sobered me up for like a minute or two. And my dad was like, mate, everyone you know is obviously trying to get hold of me, your mum, Jack, your brother. You said, like, in a nice way, everyone just wanted to know, was I all right? Because I'd updated everyone. hey, I've lost my leg, but don't stress, it's all good. Who wants a Birkenstock? Cheers. And then from that, just to radio silence. Everyone's like, is he all right? So I just said to my dad, you're never going to be able to text everyone back. You've got my phone, just put an update on my Instagram and everyone will just see it. So he took a video of me completely out of it, put an update on Instagram saying, and actually the update was probably a bit less bad than it actually was, but just saying, look, he's in critical care, hopefully he'll be all right, sort of thing. And then that video, I just fueled the fire, and then it went mental. So then when I came round from that, I was like, I don't really remember it, but I remember thinking, all right, this has gone a bit crazy. And then I had like BBC call in and whatever while I was in Colombia.
I mean, that video's had like 30 million views.
Yeah, it's got a lot of views, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So how are you using your accident to be a force for good?
Well, it's turned into something I didn't plan or ever expect it would, which was, like I say, that platform was purely to keep my friends in the loop. And once I was controlling it again, I just carried on using it initially just to keep people in the loop, because I had a lot of followers compared to what I had, but it wasn't like a thing I was sitting there thinking, oh, this is going to be a job or like a thing I'm going to do forever. It was just still the thing I was using to keep people updated, because both my legs were snapped, but my right collarbone's broken, right hand's broken, so this was out of action, and my left arm was just I had like 15 cannulas in it. So if I moved, all the machines would start beeping. So I could barely type. So I'd just do like one video a day, just letting people know what was going on. So it blew up. Now I don't need to keep people updated anymore. I see my friends, I see my family. People know I'm fine. So I'm like, what is this platform for now? And actually, a part of me was like, do I even bother doing it anymore? But then now I do get people coming up in the street, constantly had it on the way here, like people just saying, oh mate, I've seen your videos, I've been going through this tough period, and like sometimes it's big things like huge injuries or people have died or whatever, or it's like my girlfriend dumped me or whatever, and I've been feeling real down about it and I didn't want to go to the gym, but then genuinely your video popped up and you were like there with one leg trying to smash the weights out, and I was thinking, if this guy's doing it, I better do it as well. And honestly, I get that daily at the moment. And it makes me think, when people first started saying, oh, I get motivation from your videos, I thought, oh, you're saying that to be nice. But now I'm thinking, maybe it actually is doing some good. I don't know. And if it is, great. If it's not, then sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it must be doing good, because, you know, obviously your story is appealing to so many people for a reason. And I think it is down to your positivity and like determination. So I've watched your videos in the gym. I love your videos in the gym. And I've watched you doing a single leg deadlift. You know, you're like all over the place. But, you know, I guarantee in 3 months' time, you'll have nailed that.
Yeah, it's just the other thing is as well, I think the reason people are on board with the journey is because it is a journey. Like there are some people like who have been there from critical care Colombia video, who have then seen rehab video, and I've not also, like, the reason I said before I think social media is bad, and I've always thought this, is that people just show the best side of their lives. It's like, look at me, I'm on holiday. Look at me, I've got a promotion. It's just the best part of everyone's life. The thing I'm making a conscious decision to do is share the good parts of the recovery, like I've got a new leg, but also the bad parts. And they're probably even split. Like I think it was last week, I got a new prosthetic fitted and I couldn't get it on my leg. I had a really tough appointment. I shared a video about it. Or that weekend I mentioned I went home and I had a really depressive 3 days after. I made a video just about I literally wrote a journal and I just read it and put some clips with it, and I shared the crap part, which is why I think people are more maybe bought in, because they actually see that it's legit. I'm not trying to make my life seem amazing. I'm just sharing what's happening. Yeah,
you're sharing a vulnerable side as well as the strong side, aren't you?
Yeah.
Let's talk about sport and exercise, because that's obviously a big passion of mine. And I think you're quite into the gym and sport and exercise. Have you struggled at all with your relationship to your physicality because of things you can't now do?
That's an interesting question, actually, because I have always put a lot of my, what you call it, self-worth or my identity in being like active and fit. And if there was ever a physical challenge, I'm like, I know I can smash it, sort of thing. It's always my identity has been that. Probably that and travel and motorbikes. So all three have been thrown into question. But really, the first session I got back to the gym, I'm looking in the mirror thinking, I mean, you know what it's like lying down in critical care, intensive care for over a month and then back here for however many months in hospital. You just lose all your muscle mass. And I had my gym top on, which previously was like comically tight. And I could fit both my arms in one sleeve. I'm looking at myself thinking, you've wasted away. But then the moment I started getting back into it and I would go to the gym while I was in hospital, my dad would wheel me out and I'd go and do some things and the nurses would always be like, go on then, whatever, do you. But it felt like me. I felt like myself again for the first time. And if anything, it's helped me get through. I don't sit here thinking, I wish I was as strong as I was before. I just doing those daily gym sessions just make me feel myself. And it's the only thing actually I think that actually like resets my brain.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time because I say on my cancer journey as well, exercise was the only time I felt like me.
Yeah, it is. It's the only time. Like my coping mechanism of anything in life, I've never been much of a meditator or a yoga person or whatever. I just go and smash myself up in the gym. I get my heavy tunes on and I just blast myself in the gym for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that's not really changed.
And you were a good rower as a kid?
Yeah, I used to row at a national level. Like I did British championships and all that stuff when I was younger.
So the para rowing team?
Well, yeah, I've been down to meet them.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
So one of the positive sides of social media, like they found out obviously about my crash and somebody reached out and just said, would you be interested in taking it back up? But it's currently a bit of a pipe dream and obviously the way all the categories work and stuff, like I've got quite a big injury based on the category. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'd love to do it. If it was down to pure effort and just putting in the hours in the gym and on the water, I'd do it. But right now, like I can't even row because my leg doesn't bend enough and like it just wouldn't. It's not an effort thing. Is it possible? I don't know. It depends on my prosthetic. Depends on my leg. If it is possible, I'll do it. But
I mean it's early days. Again.
It's just too early days.
6 months. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I'd love to though.
Yeah. What's next? What do you plan to finish the Americas trip?
Oh yeah.
Can you get on a bike? Have you got an adapted bike now, or how does that work?
No, I've not ridden my own bike. I've been back on Jack's bike. So my friend Jack, who I mentioned, was at first I said to him like, you go finish your trip. Don't cancel it because of what's happened to me. And I talked him into finishing it, and he did like a week on the bike. And just went, no, I'm not doing it without you. And I think also, like at the end of the day, he's been through a pretty traumatic thing himself. He was the one that was there when it was all happening. Yeah. So he put his bike into storage. He came back. So he's still got his big Harley back home. So I'll sit on the back of that and we'll ride around. But at the moment it's not very comfortable. My leg doesn't really bend that much because the prosthetic's built up quite high at the back because it's more stable that way. So I actually have to like kind of hold my foot on the peg, and also like to ride my own bike, the left foot is the gears.
Yeah, so you'll have to get something adapted.
Yeah,
at some
or get
point.
an automatic. You can get bikes which are automatic transmission, so you just ride it like a scooter, and then just plug your foot in. But that's quite far off. Like
yeah.
But
you're obviously quite a thrill seeker. Do you think you are now going to be a bit more risk averse, or do you think you'll just get on with it?
I don't really know. It's one of those things where you can't. It's almost like someone asking, "Oh, are you fight or flight?" And you don't really know till you're in it. Because if I sit here and say, "Yeah," like, "Oh yeah, I'll be super super careful with everything," and then there'll be some like cool thing going on, like I don't know what it is, some cliff jump or whatever it is, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, go on, let's do it." So probably be a bit careful, but the thing is, because a lot like we were talking before about people who have had injuries through something that wasn't dangerous, like just getting the tube walking home from work, being in a bus or a car. Like, I've met so many amputees and people who have had large injuries and trauma now who weren't doing anything dangerous. A part of me also just thinks, you got to do what you enjoy, because you don't know what can happen. You might just get run over, crossing over, whatever it is. Overthinking the dangerous stuff isn't really worth it, I don't think.
Well, probably because the odds of having a motorcycle accident probably aren't that much more than the odds of. Oh well,
yeah. I think they're pretty high. Like most of the people that I've met with amputations have lost it in a bike.
Oh really?
Accident.
So
yeah, but then at the same time, if you think about, if you're talking odds, like I'd spent a lot of time on my motorbike, like months, and that was the first crash I'd had. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was a pretty big one, but it was. You don't go skiing and expect not to fall over. Yeah. You're going to fall over, but when you go skiing 9 times out of 10, you just get a bit cold and a bit wet. You get back up, you carry on. Like, you will eventually, if you ride a motorbike long enough, you will eventually have some sort of crash. And fine, might be a broken arm or a graze, but like it can be a leg off as well.
Yeah.
Or you might die.
Yeah.
So,
but we talk about enjoying the now, don't we, and being present, because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes we do have to take risks if we enjoy that kind of thing.
Oh, I genuinely don't regret anything I've done. Like it's a hard thing to sit here and say, oh, would you have never got on a motorbike in your life and have your leg back, or because it's not a decision I can make, and there's no point thinking like that. But I don't have I don't have any regrets. Like, oh, I should have just stayed in England and sat in an office, because my life has been much more vivid and I've had way more experiences than I would have had if I'd just done that. But I would have 2 legs, so who knows?
Yeah, I tend not to ask that question, like, do you have any regrets? Because I think it's really hard as well, because you don't necessarily know the answer. But
also it's nonsense. Like, you can't go back and change it. So what is the point in thinking about you've regrets? All right, get over it. It ain't going to change. Yeah. Just don't do it again if you have a regret about it. Clearly, I don't have enough regrets about motorbiking to never do it again, because I've been back on a motorbike. So I guess it answers the question without actually having to think about it. Yeah,
and you said you're enjoying your interesting life now as well.
Yeah.
Which is important.
It's fine.
Yeah. Final question, Luke. I ask everyone, if you could go back in time to when things were their toughest, so, potentially like that weekend you talked about, coming home for the first time, what do you wish you could have told yourself as you were going through that hard time?
I think it's what I tell myself now. When I'm having the hard times, like I said before, it's just that awareness that this moment will not be forever. You will have a really tough period, and then you'll come out the other side. And it's only through doing it enough times that you realise it's going to happen. So it's so cliche. It's that this will pass. This is not that you're not going to stay in this mindset and this headspace forever. And I know the exact moment I'll go and speak to myself. It's during that period I was telling you about, and I just go, mate, it'll be all right. So now when I have these annoying days, I can't use my leg, I'm in the wheelchair, there's something going on I can't go to, can't fit my leg on, me from back then just comes and says, you'll be fine. Yeah. This will pass, next week will be better. And it is.
This too shall pass.
This too shall pass, yeah.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you for talking to us today. I have no doubt one day your story will be made into a film. That's what I see happening.
That's already in the works.
Is it? There you go. But I feel I've caught you quite early in your journey. Yeah. And I just hope you keep going from strength to strength, which I'm sure you will. And maybe I'll see you in the Paralympics.
Maybe, let's see.
That's my world.
Thanks for having me on as well.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Luke.
it.
It's been a great chat.
Wicked.
Hope you enjoyed that chat with Luke today. What a positive, determined guy. And I'm definitely going to take some lessons from it, so I hope you do too.